Great. So good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the 30th Cultural Economics Online seminar. We have today Francesco Angelini. Good morning, Francesco, from the University of Bologna, who will present a paper jointly published with Anne-Sophie Rademacher on the role of tactile value in cultural consumption and empirical research in the live music industry. Francesco is a junior assistant professor in economic policy at the Department of Statistical Sciences, Paolo Fortunati, of the University of Bologna, where he is also member of the Center for Advanced Studies on Tourism. He got a PhD at Scuola EMT Alti Studi in Lucca in 2017 with a thesis on arts economics. His main topics of research deal with cultural markets, tourist markets, and digital markets. And the discussant today is Valeria Morea. Valeria Morea, who is from Erasmus University, Rotterdam. So, Francesco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Elisabetta. I'm going to share the screen. Sorry. Can you see it?
Yes, great.
Okay, fantastic. Again, thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to share with you this very fun to do research. I mean, I enjoyed it a lot working with Anne-Sophie, and this started during the COVID period because we were in the middle of something that we experienced ourselves, and we started asking some questions about how these limitations could affect the cultural consumption. So actually, this is something very similar to what I think anthropologists do, because we were in the middle of the thing we were studying. Okay, but we are not in the survey respondents. So I want also to thank the managers of the blog Economists Talk Art, because there is a piece on that as well that went out a few days ago. So if you want to have say more fast to read information about this paper, you can find it that as well on the Association of Cultural Economics International website. So let's start. The first thing that we had in our mind when we started this research is that actually we, as everybody, could see how the coronavirus pandemic had a huge effect on physical interaction and social interaction. And the first thing that comes to one's mind should be that this is very relevant for what concerns repercussion on well-being of people, okay? This is even more clear if we think about some type of industries like the live music industry, in which actually physical contact is very typical, and at the same time was completely blocked and limited. Okay, so we asked ourselves if we can somehow measure this dramatic effect, as we say, as I wrote in this slide. The other thing that we discovered while we were studying this is that actually the sense of touch is everywhere, because it's one of, I mean, the way we perceive things, but is not very much studied, and this is not very much studied in cultural industries, if in particular. And even though some of the cultural industries and creative industries are very touch friendly, okay, not all the goods, not all the cultural goods can be manipulated clearly, but some of them can, and some cultural experiences are actually very fertile in physical contexts. Okay, so in exploring the literature, and I will talk about this in a moment, we saw that there is not much, say, there's not much space on the role of the five senses in art and cultural consumption, even though we are actually perceiving cultural goods, we are actually perceiving cultural experiences. So our main argument was that, in particular, considering sense of touch, this is one of the factors that may explain different treatment for different industries. And in particular, this is very much clear if we think about the impact of the COVID pandemic and the limitation deriving from it. So these different treatment may have increased the existing inequalities within the cultural ecosystem and among the cultural industries. Okay, so this is what more or less motivated our research. So the literature review investigation was very wide because we had to start from the sense of touch in general, and we reported here a series of concepts, a series of definitions that help us to understand what we are talking about. As a sense of touch, we think about the ability to perceive an object or other type of stimulus that come into contact with the surface of the skin. Okay, so could be pressure, could be stroking. So something that if you ever been to a concert or to a festival, it's likely that you have perceived it. Okay, and another type of definition is the one concerning the haptic perception, that is the ability of human beings to actively and intentionally explore objects and surfaces in a given environment. So here you have also something that comes from your intention, and this is just some stimulus that you perceive without looking for it. Okay, and we think that both the definitions are talking about something that has to do with what we were lacking during the COVID period in the live music industry. Okay, there is also some studies on the fact that sense of touch has some type of positive externality, like everything that has to do with the secretion of oxytocin or the love hormone. So actually, being nearby somebody may have some impacts that are not just not being alone. Okay, and the other thing that we found in the literature is the importance of the multidimensional experience linked touch that has to do with a series of various different levels of characteristics of the context, of the environment, of the people that are there, of the moment, and so on and so forth. So clearly, not all the touch experiences are pleasant, not all the touch experiences are positive, and so on and so forth. Indeed, we, and this is also, you can find it also on the paper, we defined, based on the literature, a series of factual characteristics of sense of touch that goes from pleasant to unpleasant, intentional to unintentional, conscious to unconscious, active or passive, object-oriented or human being-oriented. And if it's human being-oriented, it could be emitted by or towards relatives or somebody that you already know, or by or towards strangers. Okay, so you see that here the possible types of touch experience are very wide and may have different impact on the experience of the good or of the experience of service or whatever we want to take into account. If we focus a little bit on the creative and cultural sector, there is in general, if we think about artworks, for example, a discouragement to touch art objects and cultural goods. In fact, it's not so rare to find messages like "please do not touch," and here it also say, "even clean hands can damage the fragile surfaces of works of art." Okay, so you don't have actual haptic experience when you go to a museum. If you think about the contact with artworks, in most of the cases, okay, not every time. Indeed, there is a very interesting museum in Ancona that is called Museo Omero, It is a tactile museum, and the director is blind, and this is all designed to perceive the artworks with your hands. Okay, so if you pass by Ancona, that is in the center of Italy, go there, and then you will will tell me if this is a good suggestion or not. Also, if you think about performing arts, there is a very limited haptic experience in most of the cases, because you may have something in the ex ante on the ex post experience contact, but not during the performance in most of the cases again. What we did is also to have a look on to the past, and there was a book in 1896 by Bernard Berenson that was talking about Italian Renaissance, and introduced the idea of tactile value, even though it was a little bit different from ours, because it was talking about the illusion of tangibility in a painting, okay, as if something is tangible, okay, and it's not actually going there and touching a Giotto artwork is a little bit different. But this stimulates the sense of touch as if you are touching the object, okay? Another thing that is linked to touch in cultural industries is that there is strong importance of there are socialization moments in which physical interaction can occur, and this is even, say, clearer if we think about music industry. And still on the same sector, there have been a little bit of, as I was saying, reproduction of artifacts for blind visitors, but also some type of immersive cultural experience in which you can actually use your sense of touch. These two photos, I took them like a few days before the date I should have at this seminar, and it comes from the Natural Museum in Bergamo, in Italy, and it says the museum you can touch, and you have some actual features and other types of animal skin and whatever that you can touch to perceive it. Okay. There have been also some development on gaming for what concerns haptic devices and touch technologies that may generate some type of virtual physical contact for gamers, but this is in development, and it may also impact the way in which we say consume the goods that are part of the cultural and creative industry. What is the thing is that during COVID, all the limitations that I was talking about have been at least increased, or they remain the same, or they have been increased. So here you have another image from one museum in which it says, due to COVID, please do not touch items in exhibit. Okay, so it changed a little bit from you shouldn't touch a Picasso to it's COVID fault, you shouldn't touch a Picasso. But still, you cannot actually. I mean, the limitations have been even stronger during the COVID period. So this is even more clear if we think about live music event. This is a picture from Tomorrowland Festival in Belgium in 2016, and you can see that there is some haptic experience ongoing for sure. And I think that comparing this picture with this other picture, this is from Oklahoma City concert from Flaming Lips in 2021, you can actually see the difference. Those are bubbles which people could, I mean, enter it. They paid to enter those bubbles to enjoy the concert. I mean, it's a little bit different space and a little bit different concept of contact, physical contact and touch. Okay, so and clearly this is not so accessible, and it limits a lot of the number of people that could say experience the concert. Okay, so the third part of the literature that has to do with what we are studying is all the literature, the wide literature on the idea of value and values in the cultural world, in cultural markets in particular. If we think about cultural value in particular, there have been a lot of studies, both on sociology and cultural economics, trying to define and understand how this cultural value is built, what are its components, and how these may have an effect on the market value as well in some cases. The typology I like the most is the one by Trosby, which we have aesthetic value, spiritual value, historical value, symbolic value, authenticity value, and so on. But we also have social value that it defines as the ability of cultural good or service to create a sense of identity and belonging to a community. So thinking about this social value, is tactile value a constituent part of this social value? Because what we are talking about is that when we are part of a community or a certain group, or we may interact with them through also gestures and through touch, like handshakes, hugs, and so on. Okay, so thinking about these, the first thing we did in this paper is to propose a definition of tactile value. This is the one that I'm going to read it now. That takes into account this role of the touch within such a context. Tactile value may be viewed as a derivative of social value, and we define it as the subjective worth that an individual places in experiencing tactual contacts with or directed to other individuals participating in a given cultural situation delineated in space and time. Okay, it's pretty clear. These inherently physical experience can lead to a large spectrum of differential feelings. It could be pleasant or unpleasant, enjoyment, repulsion, and so on and so forth, depending on the agent's subjectivity, the parties involved, the environment, and the purpose of the physical act as well. Okay, so we are not saying a priori that tactile value is something positive within this type of cultural industry. Okay, but what we want to see is what we want to do is to assess. We actually already did it, but is to assess the extent of to which physical contact matters in cultural events, and in particular in live music events. And we also wanted to introduce the notion of tactile value. I mean, it's not actually an introduction because it was introduced by Berenson, but we reintroduced it because it was not so used mostly on art market studies concerning the market, the cultural industries, as far as we know. We focus on live music industry because it's an important economic sector, but also because it's very fertile on physical contacts. And we thought about mostly some type of concerts and some type of festivals, and we try to focus on young people. And our main research question is, how important is the perception and the experience of tactile value among these type of people that goes to concerts, that goes to festivals? We are keeping aside classical music and jazz music that may work a little bit different, so we're focusing on other type of live music concerts and festivals. The main hypothesis is that tactile value make live music events unique and hardly substitutable to digital experience. So if we shut the possibility to have touch and to enjoy tactile value during this type of experience, then we expect to have an economic impact on the consumers. Okay. To assess this, we used a quantitative survey based on a questionnaire and structural question model to detect potential relationship between some variables that are actually not directly measurable. So we needed to identify a series of measurements to measure this latent variable, and we did that using the question. The main result is that young festival goers show some type of pleasantness of tactile value, which affects their live music experience and their willingness to pay. And this may be useful, and I will talk about this in a moment, I mean, at the end, to practitioner, for example, suggesting to use some type of sensory marketing, and cultural policy decision makers as well. So let's go to the data. If everything is clear, if there's something unclear, please stop me. The survey was questionnaire, and we disseminated it from mid-September to mid-November 2021 in Italy and in Belgium. The main target group was Gen X and Gen Y people, mostly students from tourism management and cultural management in these two countries, and music festival goers. We had four types of questions. First one that was to say, be sure that people actually are part of this type of cultural practices, because if they don't care about live music events, then they are not a part of the sample that we want to investigate. Then we have some questions on the sense of touch in live music events, the introduction of tactile value, and also of online technologies, and some socio-demographics questions. Here is the full list of the questions that we had, and some of these are actually divided in sub-questions. So it was like way more than 34 questions, but we needed a series of measures, as I was saying, to measure the latent variables. The idea is that some concepts, like the concept of pleasantness of touch in live music events, is not so easily measurable. We don't have a scale for that. We don't have something that we can say, this is the measurement for that. So we asked people to give their point of view on how pleasant or unpleasant are a series of touch-related experience in this that you can have during these events. Okay, and we use some of these measurements. Self-certification, definition of pleasantness or of importance, and so on and so forth, to measure these latent variables that have actually no scale so far to do that. Okay. Here there are some statistics. We were able to collect 142 questionnaires, and we measured the concept of tactile value through different types of willingness to pay with respect to the say full experience. We were asking people, how much would you pay less with respect to, say, with respect to the full experience without limitation, if you have to stay 1.5 meters away from other people, if you have to be seat even though it's I don't know, rock concert, or if you want to go online. Okay. Then we also measure pleasantness of the tactile experiences during live music events, the perceived importance of this experience, and the positivity of this experience within the cultural, the live music event. Here, I wanted also to report some of the such a demographic of the people that we were focusing on. As you can see, there are, most of people is in the 15-30 span of here. There are mostly female, 88 against 50 against two non-binary, and a lot of people have a master, did, like 79 people have a master over the 142, and some of them are also employed. So they were studying, but were also employed at the same time. So they have money to go to the concert. This is some type of proxy. Some information, salary status. Most of the people are Caucasian, because we they collected data in Belgium and in Italy, even though the courses were international ones. So also people from outside the Belgium and Italy area could study there. And as you can see, we have 96 people from Belgium and 26 from Italy, and other person from other countries, mostly in Europe, though. So the four hypotheses that we test in our analysis is that are related to the concept of importance, the concept of pleasantness, the concept of positivity, and the idea of tactile value. Okay, so the first hypothesis is that the importance a person gives to the touch sense in live music event influence how touch is perceived as a positive feature of live music event. Okay, so this could also be exactly the opposite, but we set this in that way, thinking about that if you go to a live music event, it's likely that you expect to have some type of touch experience with respect to other type of context in which you could expect actually the opposite. Hypothesis 2 is the extent to which touch is perceived as a positive feature of live music events as a positive relationship with the pleasantness, a subject attaches to the touch sense in the live music events. Okay, so if it's a positive experience, then it's likely to be pleasing. Okay. A third hypothesis that the importance a person gives to the touch in those type of events has a positive influence on the pleasantness a person attached to touch sense. And finally, the pleasantness has a direct impact on the perception of tactile value that is measured as a willingness to pay for having context in which you can experience this type of event of say value. All the four hypotheses are represented here, in which we have the four latent variables measured by a series of other variables that I'm going to show you in a moment. So you see importance have an effect on positivity and pleasantness. Positivity has an effect on pleasantness, and pleasantness have an effect on tactile value. Using a structural equation model, we can also see both the direct effect that are the arrows that you can see, but also the indirect effect, because there may be some mediated effects by other variables. For example, importance has a direct effect to pleasantness here with H3, but also have an indirect effect passing through positivity. So importance in fact affect positivity, and positivity affect pleasantness. This is in the theoretical hypothesis setting, because we have also tested if these hypotheses are actually confirmed by the data. Okay, so using structural equation model, we can also see if there is some mediating effect by other variables. What we, okay, this is the way in which you represent the structural equation model, both in the structural part and then the measurement part. Structural part means that you have a relationship between your main structural variables, that are the four that you saw, and the measurement part is that related to the fact that you have to measure some of these latent variables with something. So I was saying, if we think about tactile value, we said that tactile value is measured by willingness to, 3 different measures of willingness to pay. Okay, so let me skip these, but if you want, we can get back to this later, because I want to show you some results. This is the table of the total effect. That it means that it considers both the direct effect, namely, as I was saying before, for example, the effect from importance to pleasantness, and the indirect effect, namely importance to positive to pleasantness, summed together. Okay, so the idea is that we want to see what is the total impact, both direct and indirect, from one variable to the other. Okay, some of the cells are empty because there is no relationship between the variables, or because we're talking about the same variable. Okay, pleasantness has no effect on pleasantness. We have to read it as going from the column name to the row name. So here we have that if you think about the direct effect, we have an indirect effect from, the total effect from importance to pleasantness that is positive. So we are confirming these hypothesis 3. And we have also a direct effect from importance to positivity that is positive. Although positivity has no link with pleasantness, and so there is no indirect effect on tactile value, so the total effect is not statistically significant as well. However, importance has a positive total effect on tactile value, and pleasantness has a positive total effect on tactile value. So not all the variables that we identified as latent variables have an effect on our tactile value, but the main result is that the pleasantness is very important. How pleasant is perceived, the particular touch experience that you have during live music events have an impact on, and a positive impact on your willingness to pay for those events. And at the same time, how importance you attach to the concept of touch as an effect on your willingness to pay for live music events, okay? While positivity, the fact that you are perceiving something as positive or less positive, seems to not be so relevant, at least statistically, using our data, okay? So stemming from these results, we can say something about how tactile value could be taken into account when we are trying to sell our, say, experiences, both digital experiences and live music, live experiences. Clearly, if we want to use these results, if we want to use these results to live music events, what we can do is to think about some type of sensory market, post-COVID sensory marketing related to the fact that people are actually caring about having some type of haptic experiences during live music events, something that you cannot have, sorry, during digital experiences, okay? So far, at least, there are not some type of new technologies that made you able to do that, but so far we cannot do that. Concerning cultural policies, we can think about the results related to this concept of touch and pass it to the policies, think about the impact on mental health, on well-being, on in general of music on mental health and well-being, and also of touch on mental health and well-being. And it should also take into account for what for us in thinking about how to put culture and well-being and the relationship between them in the research agenda, okay? Another suggestions coming from our results is that some type of sectors, as I was saying, suffered more with respect to others due to this type of limitation related to COVID. So financial aids should be weighted considering that. And if it's likely some people are still worried about the idea of physical contacts, then there should be some support to hygiene devices or free testing if if there will be something similar to what we experienced in the past for some sectors, because they are more concerned with physical contacts, okay? For what concerns the future research, one thing that we think should be done is to extend the dimension of the size of the samples, and to study also what happens on other type of sectors of the CCIs, but also other type of genre of music of the live music events. Clearly, it could be different in other type of genre, okay? There could be also a refinement of the questions, and in general, we think that should be a stronger focus on the role of all the senses in our production, perception, and in consumer behavior. So how each of the sense may impact the consumer behaviors, okay? One example, and then I'm done, is taste the artwork. Here, there's a very dark photo of me while I was tasting an artwork in Antwerp. It was actually a sweet that was, it was said to taste like the still life that I was looking at. And yeah, maybe it was nice, but it should have been done in a little bit less, say, mixing thing, because it was a very mixed still life. So you have a lot of flavors all together. So nice idea, but let's think about that say a little bit more. So thank you for your attention, and I'm open to your question. And first of all, the Valeria question.
Thank you very much, Francesco. And the floor for discussion is to Valeria. Valeria, please.
Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here and to listen to Francesco and Anne-Sophie's work. I have a few points and to discuss. Maybe since this is a published paper already, I think it would be nice to have some clarifications, but also to think about the future of this work and how this work can become maybe a stream of research, a shared one with other interested scholars and practitioners. Reading your paper, I think that the greatest point that you make in terms of contribution is really this conceptualization of tactile value as a social dimension of the arts and the consumption of arts, but maybe also the production of the arts. So, you know, I have some research in which I stress how the social aspect of the arts is probably one of the most important. And so I really value this part, this contribution of yours. And I think it's a very great point. I was very happy to read about it. So before delving into questions, I would like to ask a very blunt one, since it's a published paper. So I see the value of your contribution, Francesco, but I would like to ask you, what do you think is the value of your contribution? And most specifically, what should I quote you on if I want to cite your paper, besides the empirical evidence that touch is important in music and live performances? What do you think is, you know, a few important aspects that we could find in your paper and use your research for our research?
Thank you, Valeria, for this first really interesting question and for the opening. And I think that as you already said, and you got it right, this wanted to be a stimulus to go on investigating this particular type of value and how this value may have an interaction with the social context. So these are have already been spotted by you, but I also think that if one want to go a little bit more in depth on the statistical analysis, you can see that, I mean, I had to do it quite fastly, but if you want to go a little bit further on that, it could be interesting to see how you can measure something that in most of the cases is considered as concepts. Okay, let me explain it a little bit a little bit better. The idea is that we have an idea on how concepts may be related one with the others, okay? Because theoretically, I mean, we think about that and we say, yeah, this may be related to that, this may be related to that, and so on and so forth. But in some cases, this makes sense, but we don't have a proof for that. We cannot actually prove for that. And what I think we did in this paper is also to suggest a way in which you can pass from a relationship going from one concept to the other to a way of measuring if this relationship is actually there or not. Clearly, the model, as every empirical model, has its weaknesses, and this is it. I mean, we cannot do much about that. We can replicate the analysis with other data and so on and see if it holds. But I think the empirical testing on the relationship between concepts is something that adds a little bit more of strength to this say I would say more standard discussion on the relationship between concepts. I don't know if I've been clear.
To me, yes. Thank you, Francesco. I think it's actually a great answer in the sense that this is really the hardest part in cultural economics research to operationalize concepts, because we know that there are some things which are important, but it's extremely hard to empirically prove them or see them sometimes. So Great. Now I know a bit more about your contribution, and I appreciate you for that. I think you also helped me with the second question that I have. I don't have a lot of questions for you, but I am following up on this insight on tactile value as a social dimension of performing arts in this case. I wanted to ask you, and of course, this is connected with what you just talked about. Could you expand however you want on how you operationalize, but also how this concept of tactile value or touch as a dimension of social value, how is it substantiated in your empirical study? Meaning, when looking at your questions, for example, where do we have the nexus between touch and social, or on the other way around, maybe between the social part, social aspect? So I guess like something related to rituals and effervescence that you cite in your paper. So the being together is more social, and the touch looks like something that stems from this. And so I'm curious to understand better this relationship. So what's the link between social and touch? And maybe you could also talk a little bit more, since we say it's a published paper, we want to see what we can make out of it in the future. So maybe if there is some other variables that we could consider, or if there is some other things that would help us more in this link making.
Sure.
I hope my question was clear.
Yeah. It was also a very good one again. What we did is to, there were actually a lot of questions here, and we didn't use all the answers, because we started from a, say, wider set of questions, and we said, yeah, maybe we should focus only on some of them, because we are interested on this idea of tactile value. This means that we still have a big data set that we can use for other things. So this link is linked to what we can do in the future, because we also asked about fear of having physical contacts that we didn't use on this analysis. We also asked about new technologies that may modify the way in which you experience haptic and touch in general experiences. But to get back to the idea of social value and to the link to touch, we had a series of questions on how important is the social aspect of being within the event, namely sharing time with other people, being in physical contact with other people that you know and that you don't know, what cases, that we used in particular to measure the idea of importance. The latent variable of importance is the one more related to the idea of social value. Here we have the social value variable that is linked to how much you weight if you take into account as all the idea of being in a social context when you are evaluating the importance of having some type of cultural experience. So they had to choose between different type of values linked to the typology of Trosby. Clearly, we wasn't talking about authenticity, because I don't think it makes a lot of sense in live music events. And if you choose to say, yeah, social value is very important when we are having some type of cultural events, or taking part of some type of social event, of musical events, then we add this variable to be equal to 1, otherwise it was equal to 0. Then we also have this importance of touch, perception of that. How important is touch in live music events? It was in a Likert scale from 1 to 5, and they had to define how important is that for them. So we linked the two together because we think that first of all, because they were very much related. We did also some factor analysis that is not reported here nor in the paper, but we wanted to see if there were some variables that were related one with the other. Okay, so the idea is that if something falls within the same factor in the factor analysis, then it's likely that the two have some type of generating effect, say generating, say, the same origin some way. Okay, so the idea is that if you very much value the touch in live music events and you give importance to social value in live music events, they are related somehow, and this is why we link together to when we talk about importance. So but if we want to be a little bit more theoretical and non-data driven, the idea is that if you are part of some type of community, that could be also a community that you don't know before. Okay, you just go to a concert and are part of something, and you experience the fact that you are part of something, then there may be an impact on how you perceive touch with respect to being in a place in which you don't feel like that. Okay, so I think that, and this should be, say, I think there should be more analysis of that. We are only, say, thinking about that, and while doing that, we did this type of say model, but I think this should need a little bit more of evaluation. There is some type of link between the social context and the importance you give to touch, but you have to be part of some community, or you have to be clearly with your peers and relatives, and you are already in your community, but also maybe outside of your peers community, you can meet somebody that feels like, make you feel like you are sharing some type of social value. Sorry, I don't know if I answered you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much. Yes, I think it makes sense, absolutely, and in a way, this would spark some sort of a follow-up question about. So I am currently working on the concept of co-production. So to understand from more a microeconomics perspective how supply and demand can get together beyond contracts and in the arts and do something that in public services, public good studies is called co-production. And I think, and what you are talking about in a way resonates with what I'm working, which is not a survey, not on performing arts necessarily, but I think it would be interesting in a way to try to connect the demand and the supply. So your study is very much focused on the demand side, of course. Your survey was disseminated among festival goers and concert goers. And this is a bit more of a speculation question, of course, but I am curious to know if you think there is a way to operationalize or to maybe even extract from your data set now, if there is an interest, not just for being together with other demand-siders, with other people or other attendees, but also if there is a tactile value attached to the fact that, for instance, the music players are physically there, as opposed to being together to the movies, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if this makes sense as a question, considering your homework, which...
Yeah. It makes absolutely sense, and there were actually questions about that on the survey we disseminated, but we didn't use the answers. The idea was that how much you value the fact that you are in the same place in which the musicians are, and in some cases, I mean, not in all concerts and festivals, but in some cases you can actually also touch musicians because they crowd surf, they touch people while they are singing and whatever. And there was, this is all together in the same question about being in the same place as. But there is also another thing that has to do with being in the same place in which the musicians are, and is related to the fact that you feel part of what is happening. It's not just you feel part of a crowd, but you feel part of the whole thing. I mean, in a way, also where is the picture? This one, you are part of the whole thing, even though you are not touching anybody. I mean, only relatives could be in the same bubble together, something like that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just touch plastic and that's it. But you feel part of something, and you also feel part of something very odd to me. But I mean, very rare and so. But yeah, I mean, there should be some investigation also on the other side. I think also the musicians should be they interviewed to see what they feel like about that. I used to play when I was younger in a music band, and I remember that if you had few attendants, you were like less likely. I mean, you were playing not in the same way, and I think it's something. I mean, for me, similar to what I experienced when I was having lessons on online only, because you don't actually share nothing with nothing. You cannot actually share the same place and physical movements with the people that are on the other side.
Yeah, and indeed, education is in this co-production literature. Co-education is a classic example of a co-produced good. Indeed, so I think we have much more experience on that, but it's very similar. Before the time is up, I'm very happy to see that there is some raised hands. Shall I ask Andrei to ask his question?
Thanks. You hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation, Francesco. I apologize. Yeah, now the camera is on. There could be multiple questions, but two short ones. Firstly, which I think relate to what Valeria noted in the discussion. Firstly, is there any way that the model that you had for the circular equations could be assessed as causal? So you probably know there could be confounding relationships within. Is there anything that could be done here? And in the light of the broad debate that Valeria opened, a rather broad question, do you think there is any other way SEMs are used to model latent constructs? Is there any other methodological way to model many latent, if you wish, so unmeasurable concepts in culture with statistics, with methodology? SEM is naturally a nice way because it features latent constructs. So shortly, thanks.
Thank you. About the causality, is not so easy to me to assess that, in the sense that it's hard to I mean, I don't know how minds work, so I don't know if people is thinking about first at the importance and then at the positivity and then these that. So it should be something more on the, I think, psychological aspects of this type of reasoning. But what we thought when we set the model is that if something is not important, then it's not, you don't care if it's positive or not, and then you don't care if it's pleasant or not. So we didn't thought about the idea of what is the passages that, I mean, the process of thinking that you have, but it's something more logical. If this is not important, then you don't care about that. About the positivity to pleasantness idea is that if something is not positive, or is, I mean, if you don't care about that, this is gone. If something is positive, then you can also feel some type of pleasant experience related to that. But if it's not positive, you cannot do that. More or less, the idea is that. I mean, it could be a negative effect, but in general, all the measurements that we use for the positivity variable were intended to be positive, actually. Okay, so you cannot actually have negative experience, say, variables, but at most you give the lower value in the Likert scale for those variables. And then pleasantness to willingness to pay is, I mean, it's it comes more logically, even more logically, because if it's pleasant, then you want to pay more for that. No? About the other models, I'm not sure about that, since, as we were saying, there are a lot of latent concepts that you have somehow to take into account. And I think that the SAM is the pros to be quite simple to explain if you want to take into account this type of latent concept. There may be also other type of models, but I think they are less easy to understand, to explain more than to understand. And the idea is that you may have mediators effect, you may have confounders and so on, and you can test for these with a lot of different models. But I like the simplicity of this one, because you just see this picture here, and it tells you everything. Okay, so it's very easy to explain, also in a interdisciplinary sense, in the sense that if you're not used to use statistical models and you see something, I mean, like that is exactly the same thing, you can say, well, what is it? But if you see these, it's clearer. Okay, so if you have to do some type of interdisciplinary analysis or study, as it's likely that happens in the art market studies, I think that the clarity of the SAM is very much important. I don't know if you share my view.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe just, yeah, an earlier thought, but hopefully others intervene as well. From on an earlier workshop in culture economics way in 2009 in Steyr, we shortly discussed with David Crosby how to measure culture values, and the possibility, I think, of SAM was mentioned, and he wasn't said not really for measuring. So it's probably an interesting question. How to access.
Yeah. I think it's not easy. I mean, all the models have weaknesses, and these are weaknesses clearly, and you know them very much. But I think you have to put something on. I mean, consider both the pros and the cons, and these have a good equilibrium, for me at least.
The question is probably also if or how to go outside of latent variable modeling, but this is outside. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, I'm sorry, the time is over. It was a very interesting presentation, very interesting discussion. Let me quickly add a conceptual remark, because I would rename your concept of tactical value into social tactability or tactile sociability, a point that was raised by Valeria earlier on. And because here you are clearly referring to a social cultural participation, live music concerts, music being very intangible as such. Contrary to the picture you showed about yourself with an art object, which is very tactile, very concrete, tangible. So perhaps for further research, you could also refer to the literature on individual versus social cultural participation. For instance, we published with Frateschi a paper on joint cultural participation a few years ago in the Journal of Cultural Economics, with also a link to well-being. But this is for possibly another cultural economics online series. So I would like to thank once again Francesco and Valeria for their terrible job. And the audience, of course, for the questions, for the remarks. And please stay tuned for the next CEOS coming. For instance, we will have in January a mini CEOS, mini symposiums organized by Andrei, that you just heard. And of course, mark your calendar the second Tuesday of the month every 2 months. So the next one will be in January, and then March, etc., etc. So stay tuned with the Association for Cultural Economics website. Thank you so much to everybody.
Thanks a lot for having me and for the interest and for the questions. Thank you, Valeria, again.
Thank you. Thank you
Have a
all
nice
for
day.
listening. Have a lovely day.